We got some pretty stunning new polls in for you today, and it will not surprise you to learn they are all 100% bad news for President Donald Trump. Let's start with the Fox News swing state polls. Right now, they have Biden up 11 in Pennsylvania, of course, a state that Trump narrowly won last time. They have Biden up 13 points in Minnesota, a state that Hillary Clinton very narrowly won last time around, and they have Biden up 9 points in Michigan.
Yeah, disaster.
Yeah, and it's Fox News, so it's hard for people to be like, of course, some of their own hosts are like, it's fake news. Look, when all the polls, they can be off. We grant that a little. They were off a little bit last time around. When all the polls basically show the same thing, you have to admit some reality that's going on here. And one of the important dynamics is it's not just the battleground state. It's not just the national polls. It's the battleground states that we see here with Fox News that have moved sharply against President Trump. And some of the analysis I saw that we're actually going to talk to the panel about, too, is it's overwhelmingly this movement has come from seniors and from white suburbanites. Interestingly, Biden is actually weaker with Latinos in particular and with young voters and somewhat with African Americans than Hillary Clinton was. The Latino numbers stand out in particular. But when your battleground states are Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, there isn't a large Latino population. There's not nearly enough to make up for this massive swing of seniors in particular towards Joe Biden.
That's right. And once again, which is that there's a huge difference between Clinton being up +4 and then Trump winning narrowly in a couple of swing states than +13, right? We just have to acknowledge and internalize how many standard deviations away from 2016 that we are right now. The polls are wrong. That's not the same thing, right? It's just not fundamentally whenever you're down by 13 points or 10 points or 9 points in many of these swing states. And Florida is a perfect example. Florida was an incredibly tight race between Hillary and Trump. It was always within 1 to 2 points. Well, what does that show you? That is a Quinnipiac poll here that shows you that Trump is down by 13 points in the state of Florida. And just to give you an example, this is not an outlier poll. Let's throw up the next graphic that we have from 538 there. 538 graphic makes it incredibly clear. Look at that divergence come around March. They were tied. That is when it was basically a Hillary Trump style race around the beginning of the coronavirus, or right before that happened. And look at that steady deterioration as Trump basically continues to dawdle on coronavirus and not take it as seriously. There are a lot of these people called seniors who live in Florida, overwhelmingly elderly population that lives there. So what do? I hear they vote quite a bit. And there's an issue because seniors as a demographic nationwide and especially in Florida, where coronavirus is particularly out of control, they feel as if the GOP pushed reopening far too soon and tried to prioritize the economy over their livelihood and well-being, and they are taking it out on Trump by voting for Biden. That's it. That's the truth. It's all about coronavirus.
And I don't want to ignore, though, the impact of the protests, which is actually when the Lafayette Square Park crushing of the protesters, that is when the polls actually jumped and have basically stayed there. They were eroding over time because of President Trump's mishandling. And then when he handled the protest movement so poorly and people sensed that he was actually sowing more chaos on the streets rather than calming the waters, bringing people together, that has actually confirmed some of the worst fears I think that people had about this president, and that's when things really jumped to these double digits.
Seniors, though. Well, I don't think it had anything to do with seniors.
Well, we can show the poll again. I mean, when you see the data there, when you see that split and that sudden jump, that's right around the time that was occurring.
Also, when coronavirus cases exploded, I think
it all goes together. But if you track the polling, there was a significant shift right after that Lafayette Square Park incident. So I don't want to ignore the dynamic of that as well. But look, I mean, we're seeing the same thing with national polling. There's actually not a big difference between the tipping state polls and the national difference. So one of the things that has been a benefit for President Trump is the fact that, last time around, he lost the popular vote, but he was able to eke out an electoral college victory because he outperformed in those key tipping point states. What's a tipping point state? That means those are the ones that are most likely to determine ultimately the outcome and are the closest to the sort of median state and median national electoral outcome. They are all basically the same margin right now as the national lead for Biden. So there isn't even that same potential advantage, swing state advantage, that in the industrial Midwest that President Trump had last time around.
This is the main issue Trump has. He has to win Florida. There are no roads to the White House that don't lead Florida. They can win Florida. They could even lose Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I think they'd have to pick up. They have to keep Arizona, and they have to win New Hampshire. But what's the issue? Arizona wasn't on that list, but Arizona is within about 5 points for Biden right now, according to their average as well. And New Hampshire, that was another one that they, barely, it came very close last time.
Yeah.
This time around, one of the rallies that was supposed to be held was in New Hampshire after that disastrous Tulsa rally. So, look, they really needed to win that state. The fact that Biden is up by 7 there, terrible news.
Yeah.
So there's just no good news, really, for the Trump campaign at this moment. I think it all stems, his chances of re-election stem from that podium with the coronavirus briefings. I didn't get to watch yesterday, but from what I can tell, there were no outrageous
There was nothing
moments.
totally insane.
Wasn't too long. He apparently kept, the discussion focused. That's all you had to do from the very beginning. He would be up by, I think, 10 points if he did that from February onward.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And now he's in a massive deficit. We'll talk about this later. He canceled the Jacksonville Republican convention.
Which was the right move.
Right,
I mean, they really needed to do that.
Appear to be taking it more seriously. Again, I think it might be too late. I just think it is. I think the public is lost on coronavirus. I don't know if you can bring it back.
I think there was a window at the beginning when people really wanted to see the best in him, really wanted to give him a shot. There was a lot of goodwill there. People want to look to the American president, however they feel about him. And the fact that, so at that time, if he had taken it seriously in the way that he is now, I totally agree with you. We're beyond that point. It's not enough to say wear a mask at this point. You actually have to deliver in terms of the pandemic has to get under control. And then what's the other thing that we're covering here? So the economy is about to go off a freaking cliff.
Yes.
I mean, the unemployment payments, the plus up, that program is ending this weekend. Some projections say that when the eviction moratoriums end and people are, especially without that unemployment plus up, you could be facing millions of people losing their homes over the coming months. And he's not taking any leadership on that either. The leadership, what we have heard from the White House has not been good news. They're still fighting for this payroll tax cut, which isn't going to help people who are unemployed. They're trying to cut that unemployment plus up way down, which would, represent a dramatic cut in both what people are getting and also obviously what they're able to spend. So all of these things add up to a very ugly picture right now for President Trump. More Rising for you after this.